everyone, today's video is going to be a little different from my other videos on my YouTube channel because students in Hong Kong will be receiving their DSE results soon. So today, I want to share some of my experience that I got before going to college, during college, and after college. And this video is not just for students, it's for parents and those of you who are already working as well. I'll also talk about why I didn't end up being a pilot. I'll be sharing some of the mistakes I made and some of the things that I wish I could have done differently. And for those of you who have just taken your DSE, I know a lot of people would tell you that, oh, this is the test that determines your whole life. But that's not true. Because what I'm doing now actually doesn't really have much to do with my college degree. And now, because I know my audience is mostly from Asia, when I say go to college, I don't mean secondary schools. I mean colleges and universities. In the US, when Americans say go to college, they may actually mean go to a college, which is a smaller version of a university, or university. So yeah, that's basically what go to college means. And yes, I know I didn't attend universities in Hong Kong, so I'm not super familiar with how it works. But I think what I'm about to share with you will still be very helpful. If you're still in secondary school or high school, some of the big questions that you might be asking yourself would be, should I go to college? What major should I choose? How can I make all these decisions when I haven't even started working yet? How can I decide what my career will be when I'm just 17 or 18 years old? And don't worry, I think even working adults have the same questions. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to study in the US when I was 13. So I didn't have to take DSE, fortunately. What I took was actually called the SAT in the US. It's still a college entrance test. But what's so different from DSE is that you can take as many times as you want at the time. So I actually started taking it when I was around 16 years old, when I was in 10th grade. You can take it as many times as you want, you just gotta pay. So in terms of degree choices, I wasn't limited because of my scores. And also, I had a pretty good GPA. So at the time, I could pretty much get into any state universities with scholarships too. But did I decide to do that? No. Mistake number 1. So when I was around 17 years old, I decided that I wanted to be a pilot. And just to get a head start on things, I went to get some flight training. And I would do it a few times after school, so it was actually pretty tough schedule-wise. But thinking back, I'm actually quite glad that that was what I did. Because, as you can tell, I'm not a pilot right now. And why? Because during the flight training, I realized that I actually hated flying. So just a little bit of background for you. Private flight training in the US is actually not cheap. And back then, I'm talking about 2007. Each flight hour in a Cessna 172 was around $175 US. And sometimes when I didn't do well on my flight training that day, I still had to pay for it. Or my parents still had to pay for it. And if you want to become an airline pilot, first, you need to get your private pilot license, and then there are many more licenses after that. To get your private pilot license at the time, you would need at least 40 hours to do so. And that doesn't mean everyone can do that. Because I remember there was actually a girl at my flight school. It took her almost 100 hours to get a private pilot license. So you can do the math there. So I wouldn't say I was a great pilot. I got mine at around 80 hours. So the cost was a factor, and some of the things that I had to do in order to get the license kind of freaked me out. For example, one of the maneuvers that I had to do was to stall the aircraft. So what that means is that purposely you have to get your plane out of control, and then you have to save yourself from it. And also I had to do solo flights. I had to fly an aircraft by myself from one point to another. That kind of freaked me out too. But I did finish my training at the end and got my license. And since then, I've never flown again. And also during my flight training, the flight instructors I had, they actually all wanted to become airline pilots. And being a flight instructor was actually one of the ways to accumulate your flight hours to become an airline pilot. Because airlines in the US will not hire anyone with that experience. So my advice is, if you really want to become a pilot, either join the military or try to go through some sort of cadet program like Cathay Pacific's. So how was this a mistake? When I finally got my private pilot license, it was actually just months before going to university. So at the time, everything was already set. I decided that I wanted to go to Embry-Riddle, which was a private university. And oh my god, the tuition was expensive. And somehow, my dad still agreed to pay for it. And I think, if I remember correctly, at the time, it was around $27,000 a year. And at the time, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I thought I still wanted to be in aviation. So I went with it. So looking back, I should have just stopped myself from going to university. Probably try to get a part-time job or some sort of job anyways. And then try to figure out what I wanted to do first. Instead of spending a tremendous amount of money on a university that I wasn't even sure that I wanted to go to. But I think one good thing that I did do there was I got my flight training early before going to college. So then I figured out that flying was not my thing. Because later on in college, I met other students. They gave up midway because the flight training cost was just so high. And I remember someone told me that he spent close to $1 million Hong Kong dollars on their flight training alone. And even midway through college, I knew aviation wasn't my thing, but I was already halfway through. And I didn't want to waste my time and effort. And I did think about switching back to a state university just to save some money and actually try to get a degree that I actually liked. But because I was already halfway through, and I think my ego was pretty big at the time, so I decided to just go through with it. And now, I'm not even in aviation anymore. So in the end, I did graduate with a degree in aviation. And I also got jobs in aviation for a few years after finishing school. I worked at a private jet company and also in air traffic control. But then eventually, I was just very burned out by the jobs that I just decided to quit aviation altogether. And now I'm teaching English. So my advice is, if you have the time and money, and if you're not sure what you want to study, perhaps try to work a little bit first. Figure out what you really like, and try to speak to people in that field. Don't just randomly go for a degree for the sake of getting a degree. And if you do end up with a major that you don't like, just stop and figure out what you want to do first, instead of wasting time, money, and effort. And don't worry, even if you end up with the wrong major, a major that you don't like, it's okay. Because a lot of people are like that too. It's just hard to stay motivated when you're doing something that you don't like every day. Mistake number 2, I was in a hurry. So during college, I had various part-time jobs. I was always working and studying, of course. And at the time, because I realized how expensive my university was, I just wanted to graduate ASAP. So every summer, I would take summer classes just to finish my degree sooner. Instead of 4 years, it only took me 3 years to complete my degree. But that was actually a huge mistake. One of the things that you really want to do when you're in college is to try to get as many internships as possible. Because that was how a lot of my friends got their full-time jobs even before graduation. The first summer when I was in college, it was hard for me to get an internship because most of the courses that I studied were just general classes. They weren't really related to my major yet. So I decided to take summer courses. But looking back, I should have tried to get a summer job instead, just to try to get a different perspective on things and build up my work experience. In the second summer, I did get an internship with an airline in Texas, and that was a really good experience. Even though the pay was low, but it was enough to pay my rent and my normal expenses. The third summer, I was ready to graduate. And at the time, I actually had friends that would take the whole semester off just to do an internship. And those were the ones that ended up with full-time jobs, even before graduation. So my advice is, even if you cannot get an internship, try to get some sort of part-time job or summer job. And if you really can't get any of them, and if you have time and money, perhaps go on a backpacker trip. That's something that I wish I would have done as well. But I was in a hurry to work, so I didn't do any of that. And now because I'm working full-time with a kid, it's impossible for me to do those. Lastly, a big question. College or not? I know this is a very heated subject, and my answer is yes, you should go to college. But only if you're so sure what you want to study, and you're sure that it will somehow benefit your career later on. So don't just blindly go for a major that you don't like. One of my friends actually said he didn't know what to study at the time. He went for business administration. And he said that only people who didn't know what to study would choose to major in BA, because it's a degree that's supposed to be applicable to everything. But when I was 18, I was worried that I would be too old for college, so I just decided to get it done right away. And looking back, it's okay to start university even in your 20s or 30s. So that pretty much summed up the mistakes I made and regrets I had. Well, just some of them. Now, I'm not saying you should absolutely follow my advice, because there are just things that I wish I would have done differently. If you're in the same situation right now as I was, I hope you found my advice helpful. So let me know what your plan is in the comment section below, even if you're a parent or a working adult. Thanks for watching today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.